Your Majesty, the Queen demanding half your river is the Omega you banished 7 years ago. Caleb Warren stopped halfway across the council chamber. For several seconds, even the elders surrounding the long oak table seemed to forget the maps spread before them. Say her name. The guard swallowed. Queen Amelia Hayes of Silvercrest. Caleb had not heard that name spoken inside Ironwood since the winter he ordered its gates closed behind her. Back then, Amelia had owned one travel bag, a faded gray cloak, and an Omega rank his council considered an embarrassment to the throne. Now the eastern doors opened for a sovereign ruler. Amelia entered with 4 Silvercrest advisors behind her. No jeweled spectacle announced her authority. She wore a dark blue coat, polished riding boots, and a narrow silver crown. Yet the entire room rose. Caleb did not. He could not. 7 years had changed the softness in her face into something calmer and harder to read, but he recognized her immediately. So did his wolf. Amelia. Her gray eyes settled on him without warmth. That name belonged to the woman you cast out. In this chamber, you may address me as Queen Hayes. The words landed cleanly. No anger. No trembling. Somehow that made them worse. One elder shifted uncomfortably. Caleb finally found his voice. Queen Hayes, Ironwood received your demand concerning the Moonriver. Then your council described it poorly. She approached the table and placed a rolled map across the border line dividing their kingdoms. I did not come to demand half your river. Silvercrest requested equal access. Because the river does not belong to Ironwood. Caleb heard several elders inhale sharply. 7 years ago, they had called Amelia too timid to survive one royal council meeting. Now she stood before the same men and challenged their king without raising her voice. Caleb looked down at the map. Red marks followed the Moonriver for nearly 60 miles before ending at Silvercrest farmland. Our eastern reservoirs are 30% below normal, he said. Ours are nearly empty. Amelia pointed toward 3 settlements south of the border. Wells that supplied these towns for generations are failing. Farmers are moving livestock 8 miles every morning just to find water. Caleb studied her face. And you believe Ironwood caused it? I believe blaming you before I have evidence would make me a poor queen. That answer unsettled him more than an accusation would have. Then why come here? Amelia moved one finger upstream, toward a narrow stretch of mountains inside Ironwood territory. Because the Moonriver is not shrinking naturally. Marcus Cole, Caleb's beta, leaned over the map. How do you know? Silvercrest engineers measured the flow at 6 points. Water entering the northern valley is nearly double what reaches the southern basin. Caleb frowned. A leak. A river does not misplace that much water. Amelia met his eyes. It is being diverted. The chamber went silent. Caleb glanced toward his council. Where? Amelia tapped an old mark near the mountain pass. Caleb recognized it slowly. An abandoned control gate built generations before either of them was born. That gate has been sealed for decades. Then someone opened it. One elder shook his head. Impossible. Amelia rolled the map closed. Silvercrest has enough water for perhaps 10 weeks. Silvercrest has perhaps 10 weeks. And until we know where the missing water is going, neither kingdom knows what happens next. Caleb looked at the woman he had once been told would weaken his kingdom. She had returned not asking for his protection, his apology, or his crown. She had returned carrying a warning that might save his people. What do you want from me? He asked. Amelia held his gaze. For the next 48 hours, forget that you rejected me, and I will forget that I have every reason not to trust you. Caleb's jaw tightened. And after 48 hours? Amelia turned toward the doors. If we are lucky, we find out who is stealing our water. She paused without looking back. If we are not, King Warren, we find out which of our kingdoms runs dry first. Amelia was halfway to the eastern doors when Caleb said, No Ironwood soldiers cross into Silvercrest without your permission. She stopped. The council reacted before she did. Elder Harrison leaned forward. Your Majesty, if the diversion lies near our border, our patrols must have freedom to investigate. Amelia turned calmly. Inside your kingdom, they do. Inside mine, they do not. Harrison gave a thin smile. We are discussing water security, not royal pride. Exactly, Amelia replied. Which is why Silvercrest's sovereignty is not negotiable. Caleb remembered another council chamber 7 years earlier, Another circle of powerful men explaining why Amelia should accept whatever Ironwood decided for her. Back then, he had remained silent until silence became agreement. This time, he spoke before anyone else could. We form a joint expedition, equal numbers from both kingdoms. Each side controls movement within its own territory. Harrison frowned. You would give Silvercrest authority over an Ironwood investigation? I would recognize that the river crosses two kingdoms. Amelia studied Caleb as if searching for the hidden price behind his answer. 6 people from each side, she said. Engineers and scouts. No military units. Agreed. All findings shared immediately. Agreed. Harrison pushed back his chair. And if their people interfere? Amelia looked directly at him. Then you may bring your complaint to Queen Hayes. Harrison's mouth tightened. You speak confidently for a former Omega. The room became still. Caleb felt his wolf stir, but Amelia needed no rescue. She stepped toward the table and rested both hands on its edge. Former. Her voice remained almost gentle. I am still an Omega. Harrison blinked. Amelia continued. Silvercrest simply never mistook that for weakness. No one answered. Caleb watched several elders lower their eyes. 7 years earlier, those same ranks had been used as evidence that Amelia could never command a royal court. Now an entire kingdom trusted her with its future. Caleb turned toward Marcus. Prepare the expedition. We leave at sunrise. You? Harrison asked. Yes. Amelia's gaze sharpened. I did not request your presence. You said we have 48 hours. I also said I do not trust you. Then keeping me where you can see me seems practical. For the first time, something almost familiar moved across. Her expression, not warmth exactly, but the memory of how easily he once irritated her. It vanished quickly. Fine. But once we cross into Silvercrest, you follow my border laws. Caleb nodded. As you will follow mine here. Good. We finally agree on something. The council dispersed to prepare maps and supplies. Amelia remained beside the table, studying the river route. Caleb approached, but stopped several feet away. Did you know I would agree? No. Then why come personally? She folded the map. Because sending an ambassador would have allowed you to refuse without looking at the people your decision would affect. Caleb absorbed that. You expected me to refuse. Amelia met his eyes. The last time your council told you protecting your position required sacrificing me, you agreed with them. There was no accusation in her voice, only memory. That made it harder to answer. I was 27. You were king. I know. She studied him for a moment, perhaps expecting an excuse. Caleb offered none. Outside, bells marked the late afternoon hour. They had less than 48 hours to find the missing water. One question, Caleb said. Amelia waited. If we find whoever opened that gate, what happens? We close it. Even if doing so sends the water somewhere neither kingdom expects. Then we measure first. She lifted the map. That is why I brought engineers instead of accusations. Caleb almost smiled. You have changed. Amelia's eyes cooled. No, Caleb. You simply never bothered to learn who I was. She walked toward the doors, then paused. Be at the eastern gate at 6 tomorrow morning. If you are late, we leave without you. Caleb watched her go. Marcus approached after the doors closed. She gives orders like she was born to a crown. Caleb looked at the empty doorway. No. He remembered the Omega who had once stood alone before Ironwood's council while everyone measured her worth by rank. That is what makes this worse. Marcus frowned. Caleb turned toward the river map. She learned to rule after I told her she never could. At 6 the next morning, Caleb reached the eastern gate and found Amelia already waiting beside 12 saddled horses. She glanced at the clock above the guardhouse. 30 seconds early. Your kingdom may survive you yet. Marcus coughed to hide a laugh. Caleb mounted without answering. The joint expedition crossed Ironwood's eastern farms first, following the Moonriver toward the mountain pass. 3 Ironwood engineers rode with 3 scouts, matched by 6 Silvercrest specialists. No banners flew above them. Amelia had insisted on that. Today we need measurements, not reminders of who owns which side of the road, she had said. By mid-morning, they crossed into Silvercrest. Caleb expected heavier guards near the border. Instead, he found irrigation channels, orchards, and small farming towns built close to the river. The farther south they traveled, the clearer the damage became. Watermarks stood several feet above the current river level. Fields nearest the banks had begun turning brown. Yet people did not crowd Amelia with complaints. They brought her information. Near a village called Willow Bend, a young boy hurried toward the road, holding a broken wooden marker. A Silvercrest guard moved to stop him, but Amelia raised her hand. Let him through. The boy could not have been older than 10. Your Majesty, the North Irrigation Post broke again. Amelia dismounted. Show me. Caleb watched her kneel beside the child while one of her engineers examined the marker. She asked when it failed, how far the water had dropped, and whether his family's well still worked. The boy answered every question seriously. Amelia thanked him as if he had delivered a council report. When they rode on, Caleb turned toward the Silvercrest advisor beside him, a gray-haired man named Robert Hale. Does she always stop for broken irrigation posts? Robert smiled. Usually. That seems inefficient. It prevented 3 farms from losing their spring crop last year. Caleb looked ahead at Amelia. How did she become queen? Robert glanced at him. You truly do not know? I know Silvercrest elected her after Queen Margaret died without an heir. That is the final sentence of a much longer story. Robert lowered his voice. When Amelia arrived 7 years ago, she had almost nothing. Then came the winter famine. 5 clans controlled separate grain stores and refused to cooperate because of old disputes. Amelia convinced them to create shared routes. She spent months traveling between settlements, listening until people who hated one another agreed they preferred surviving together. Caleb felt something tighten in his chest. And that made her queen? No, it made people remember her. Robert looked toward Amelia. Years later, when Queen Margaret died, Silvercrest law required the council to elect a successor. Amelia received 11 of 12 votes. Caleb had once assumed some powerful family had raised her into royalty. The truth was harder to face. Nobody had handed Amelia a crown. She had earned the trust beneath it. Shortly after noon, the expedition reached the northern valley. The river narrowed between steep stone slopes, and an Ironwood engineer called everyone toward an old channel hidden behind overgrown brush. Amelia dismounted first. A stone control structure stood beneath the vines. Caleb recognized the royal wolf carved above its arch, the diversion gate, Marcus said. One engineer checked the mechanism while another measured the water rushing through the hidden channel. Minutes later, she returned with a pale expression. Your Majesties, the gate is almost completely open. Amelia looked toward Caleb. How much water? Approximately 40% of the river's current flow. Caleb stared at the channel. Where does it go? The engineer unfolded an old survey map. Her finger traced the diverted route north, then stopped. Into Ironwood's eastern reservoir system. Silence settled over the group. Silvercrest had been drying while Ironwood unknowingly received the missing water. Amelia did not accuse him. She simply asked, how long has this gate been open? The engineer examined mineral stains along the stone. Not weeks. Years, possibly. Caleb looked at the Ironwood crest above the gate. Whatever had started this, his kingdom had benefited from it. Marcus stepped closer. We should close it. One Ironwood engineer hesitated. If we do that immediately, several eastern reservoirs could lose nearly half their incoming supply. Amelia's eyes remained on Caleb. She said nothing. She did not need to. 7 years ago, protecting Ironwood had given Caleb an excuse to sacrifice one Omega. Now protecting Ironwood offered him the same choice again. Only this time an entire kingdom was watching what kind of man he would be. Close the gate, Caleb said. The Ironwood engineer stared at him. Your Majesty, if we shut it completely, the eastern reservoirs could lose close to 40% of their current inflow. I heard you. Elder Harrison, who had arrived with the second survey team, stepped forward. Then you understand what this could do to our farms. Caleb looked toward the diverted water rushing north through the old stone channel. I also understand where that water came from. Harrison lowered his voice. Silvercrest has survived this long. We need time to determine what Ironwood can afford to return. Amelia said nothing. She stood beside her engineers, watching Caleb rather than the gate. 7 years ago, men in another council chamber had given him nearly the same argument. Protect Ironwood. Protect stability. Let someone else bear the cost. Caleb looked at the engineer. Can you close it gradually without damaging the channel? Yes. We can reduce the diversion over several hours and monitor both systems. Do it. Harrison stepped closer. Caleb, that is an order. And when Ironwood farmers lose irrigation, we tell them the truth. Harrison frowned. That their king gave their water to Silvercrest? Caleb turned toward him. That water was flowing south before this gate redirected it. Until we know why, I will not pretend benefiting from something makes it ours. Amelia's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Surprise, perhaps, but nothing close to trust. The engineers began turning the old mechanism. Inch by inch, the hidden channel narrowed. Downstream, the Moonriver strengthened around the measurement posts. 3 inches already, a Silvercrest engineer said. The southern basin will take hours to respond, but the flow is recovering. Marcus joined Caleb near the gate. The Eastern Council will fight this. I know. They may demand emergency restrictions. Then, we ration where necessary. Harrison overheard him. You would restrict Ironwood because Silvercrest failed to protect its own water? Amelia turned, but Caleb answered first. Silvercrest could not protect something it did not know was being redirected. By late afternoon, the diversion had been reduced below 10% while engineers inspected the aging structure. Then an Ironwood messenger arrived carrying a sealed leather case. Your Majesty, the royal archivist found the original Moonriver treaty and maintenance records associated with this gate. Caleb broke the seal. Harrison moved closer. The treaty was more than a century old, but the maintenance ledger was recent. Caleb scanned the entries until one date stopped him. 6 years earlier. 1 year after Amelia had been banished. Marcus. Caleb handed him the ledger. Read that. Marcus's expression changed. Eastern Water Authority. Emergency drought order. Diversion gate opened to 40%. Amelia stepped closer. Who authorized it? Marcus continued reading. Director Samuel Mercer, under authority granted by the Moonriver Treaty. Harrison exhaled. Then it was legal. Caleb looked at him. Was it ever ordered closed? The engineer searched the remaining pages. No, Your Majesty. Annual inspections continued. The gate stayed at roughly the same setting. Amelia's eyes moved from the ledger to the rushing channel. For 6 years, according to these records, yes. Harrison's shoulders relaxed. Then there was no theft. Ironwood exercised a lawful water right during a drought. Caleb looked at the strengthening river below them. That answer should have made everything simpler. Instead, it made the problem larger. There was no saboteur to expose, no hidden enemy to blame, no crime that could be corrected by punishing one person. Ironwood had followed its own law, maintained the gate openly, and benefited year after year, while Silvercrest downstream slowly paid the cost. Amelia met Caleb's eyes. You wanted to know who was stealing our water. Caleb looked down at the legal authorization in his hands. Nobody was. Harrison nodded. Exactly. Amelia's voice remained quiet. Then tomorrow we discover whether something being legal is enough to make it right. By 9 that evening, the question before Ironwood's council was no longer who had diverted the Moonriver. It was whether Ironwood had the right to keep doing it. Amelia stood at the opposite end of the long oak table with Robert Hale and 2 Silvercrest engineers, while Elder Harrison placed the original treaty beside the 6-year maintenance ledger. There is no ambiguity, Harrison said. The Eastern Water Authority acted legally. The treaty gives Ironwood control of the diversion gate. Amelia looked at the documents. Was Silvercrest represented when that treaty was written? Silvercrest did not exist as a kingdom then. So the answer is no. Harrison's expression tightened. A kingdom cannot demand representation in an agreement signed before it existed. I am not demanding that history change. Amelia met his eyes. I am asking whether the present should remain trapped inside it. Caleb remained silent, listening. The records had removed the easiest explanation. No secret enemy had opened the gate. No official had broken Ironwood law. During a severe drought 6 years earlier, Director Samuel Mercer had used authority granted by the treaty, and every inspection afterward had treated the diversion as lawful. Harrison turned toward Caleb. Your Majesty, we now know Ironwood committed no crime. I agree. Amelia's gaze shifted toward him. Harrison relaxed slightly. Caleb continued. That does not mean the arrangement is fair. The relief disappeared. Fairness does not fill reservoirs. Neither does pretending Silvercrest can survive without the same river. Harrison tapped the maintenance ledger. Our eastern farms have depended on this flow for 6 years. Closing the gate too quickly will create shortages here. Amelia answered before Caleb could. Then do not close it carelessly. Harrison looked surprised. Amelia unfolded a supply report. Silvercrest can release groundwater reserves from our western ridge for a limited period. We can support household wells, livestock stations, and the most vulnerable greenhouse crops in Ironwood's 3 affected districts while your reservoirs adjust. You would send water to us? One elder asked. Temporarily. Your farms still need irrigation reductions. Silvercrest cannot replace a river with wagons and storage tanks. Caleb appreciated the distinction. How long can you maintain that support? 72 hours without placing our western communities at risk. Longer if both kingdoms establish conservation measures. Harrison shook his head. And in exchange? Nothing. His skepticism deepened. Amelia continued. Farm families did not write this treaty. Neither did the children whose wells are failing in Silvercrest. I will not turn their water into a bargaining weapon because our governments inherited a bad system. Caleb looked at the woman his council had once called unfit to share responsibility for Ironwood. Now she was offering help to the kingdom that had benefited from her people's loss. Marcus, Caleb said, prepare temporary conservation orders. Protect household water first. Reduce non-essential royal use immediately. Agricultural districts move to scheduled irrigation while reservoir levels stabilize. Harrison leaned forward. You are accepting her plan? I am accepting a plan that prevents civilians on either side from carrying the entire cost. And the treaty? Caleb placed one hand over the old document. The treaty remains legally valid tonight. Amelia's expression cooled slightly. Tonight, Caleb nodded. Because I will not pretend I can erase 143 years of law in an hour. But tomorrow, both kingdoms begin discussing whether Ironwood should continue holding unilateral authority over a river we both need. Harrison stared at him. You would voluntarily surrender a legal right. I would reconsider whether it should ever have been unilateral. For her, Caleb's eyes hardened. No. If I change the system only because Queen Hayes is someone I once wronged, then I have learned nothing. The chamber fell silent. Amelia studied him, but Caleb did not look away. This has to remain right even if she never forgives me. For the first time that evening, Harrison had no immediate answer. After midnight, the council adjourned. Amelia remained beside the window, while Caleb gathered the river reports. You surprised me again, she said. I am beginning to worry that sounds like approval. Do not. A faint trace of amusement touched her face, then vanished. Closing the gate was easier when we thought someone might have opened it illegally. Caleb looked toward the treaty. Now we know no one did. Exactly. Amelia stepped toward the door. There is no villain for you to punish, Caleb. No crime you can condemn and walk away from feeling righteous. He understood what she was asking before she finished. The law itself gave us the advantage. Yes. Her hand rested on the door. Tomorrow I find out what kind of king you are when injustice does not require you to break the law. Caleb glanced once more at the century-old treaty, only to stop hiding behind it. Amelia held his gaze for a moment, then left him alone with the document that had made Ironwood innocent of theft and responsible for something far harder to excuse. Legal does not mean just. Caleb's words silenced the council before Elder Harrison could reopen the Moonriver Treaty. Morning light stretched across the long oak table, where representatives from Ironwood and Silvercrest had gathered beside reservoir reports, flow measurements, and 6 years of maintenance records. The facts were no longer disputed. Ironwood had opened the diversion gate legally during a drought. Ironwood had maintained it legally. And Silvercrest had slowly lost water because the law had never required Ironwood to ask what happened downstream. Harrison folded his arms. Your Majesty, no one claims the arrangement is perfect, but surrendering authority over the gate could permanently weaken Ironwood. Sharing authority is not surrender. It is when the authority currently belongs to us. Amelia sat across from Caleb without speaking. He understood why. If she pushed him now, his council could dismiss every change as guilt or personal influence. This decision had to be his. Harrison continued. Our ancestors negotiated this right. Robert Hale answered calmly. With no representative from the communities that later became Silvercrest. Because Silvercrest did not exist. Exactly, Caleb said. Harrison turned toward him. Then how can Ironwood be responsible for excluding a kingdom that did not exist? We are not responsible for what they decided 143 years ago. Caleb placed his hand on the treaty. We are responsible for what we decide today. Another elder leaned forward. Then what are you proposing? Caleb slid a new document across the table. A 90-day provisional joint Moonriver Stewardship Commission. 6 representatives from Ironwood. 6 from Silvercrest. During the trial period, neither kingdom may make a major change to the diversion gate without approval from both sides, except during a verified emergency. Harrison stared at the page. You would give Queen Hayes equal authority over an Ironwood structure? I would give Silvercrest equal authority over decisions affecting a river its people require to survive. And after 90 days? The Commission reviews reservoir levels, civilian access, agricultural impact, and river flow. Then both councils decide whether shared stewardship should become permanent. Amelia finally spoke. Silvercrest will participate under 2 conditions. All measurements must be visible to both kingdoms, and emergency restrictions must protect civilian wells before royal estates. Marcus glanced toward Caleb. That would apply to Ironwood properties as well. Especially Ironwood properties, Caleb said. Amelia gave a small nod. Harrison did not. You are placing generations of royal authority into an experiment. Yes. Because she challenged you? Caleb looked directly at him. No. Because 6 years of records prove that Ironwood can obey the law perfectly and still leave another kingdom paying for our decisions. Harrison tapped the treaty. What happens if the experiment fails? Then we use evidence from the 90 days to negotiate something better. And Ironwood's old authority? Caleb paused. The 90 days are a test of shared stewardship, not a countdown until we take the river back. The chamber went still. Harrison's voice lowered. Your father would never have said that. My father is not making this decision. Caleb looked toward Amelia, then back to the council. Having the power to decide does not mean I have the right to decide alone. Something shifted in Amelia's expression. 7 years earlier, Caleb had decided her future in a room much like this one. He had listened to powerful men, measured political risk, and never asked what his decision would cost her. The parallel needed no explanation. By noon, both delegations agreed to send the provisional framework to their councils for ratification the following day. The first joint measurements would continue under the temporary emergency rules until then. When the chamber emptied, Amelia remained behind. Caleb expected another question about the river. Instead, she stood across from him and asked, Did you know? He frowned. Know what? 7 years ago, when you sent me away. Her voice had lost its royal distance. Did you truly believe I was too weak to stand beside you? Caleb felt every easy answer disappear. He could blame tradition, the alpha houses, his council, his age. None of them would answer what she had actually asked. No, he said. Amelia went completely still. Then tomorrow, Caleb, after the council's vote on whether you can share power with my kingdom, you are going to tell me why you refused to share it with me. I knew you were strong enough, Caleb said the next morning. Amelia stood beside the Moonriver overlook, where the restored current moved steadily through the valley below. Behind them, messengers were already carrying the provisional stewardship proposal to both councils for the day's vote. Amelia did not turn toward him. Then why did you tell me I was not? Caleb had spent the night searching for an answer that might make the past less ugly. None existed. Because 7 years ago, 3 alpha houses threatened to withdraw their support if I named an omega as Luna. Amelia finally looked at him. And you believed them? I believed they could divide Ironwood. I had been king for less than 2 years. My father's council barely trusted me. The eastern clans were threatening to leave, and I thought every decision had to prove I could control the kingdom. So you controlled me instead. Caleb lowered his eyes. Yes. Amelia's voice remained quiet. You stood before the council and said I lacked the strength to represent Ironwood. I remember. You said the throne required someone worthy of it. I remember that too. Did you believe any of it? No. The answer came without defense. Amelia stared at him. Then what did you believe? Caleb forced himself to meet her eyes. I believed keeping you would cost me political support. I believed choosing an omega would make powerful alphas question whether I was strong enough to rule. Instead of admitting I was afraid of them, I made you carry the shame for my fear. Her fingers tightened around the stone railing. Caleb continued before he could soften the truth. Calling you weak was easier than admitting I was the one who lacked courage. For several seconds, only the river spoke between them. Do you know what happened after I left? Amelia asked. Not enough. For the first year, whenever something went wrong, I heard your words explaining why. When a Silvercrest council member dismissed my first proposal, I wondered whether you had been right. When the grain routes failed the first time, I wondered whether an Omega truly had no place making decisions for others. When Queen Margaret asked me to advise her, I nearly refused because part of me still believed entering another council chamber would only prove what Ironwood had already decided about me. Caleb's chest tightened. Amelia, do not apologize yet. Listen, he nodded. Then one winter, a farming clan trusted me with enough grain to help 3 villages. Another clan joined them. Then another. Nobody asked whether my wolf ranked beneath theirs. They asked whether I would keep my word. Her gaze moved towards Silvercrest beyond the valley. That was when I learned something you should have known before I did. Rank can make people obey you. It cannot make them trust you. Caleb absorbed the words. You built what I told you that you could not. No. Amelia faced him fully. I built what I might have built beside you if you had not decided my place for me. The truth left him nowhere to hide. I am sorry. She waited. Not because you became queen. Not because seeing you now proves I underestimated what you could become. Even if you had never worn a crown, even if you had lived an ordinary life beyond Ironwood, what I did would still have been wrong. Something changed in Amelia's face. Small, but unmistakable. That is the first real apology you have given me. Caleb frowned slightly. I apologized when you returned. You regretted losing me. That is not the same as understanding what you did to me. He nodded. No, it is not. Amelia stepped away from the railing. Thank you for finally giving the truth the correct name. Cowardice. Yes. A distant bell sounded from Ironwood's eastern tower. Moments later, a rider appeared on the road below, carrying the blue and silver signal flag used for council decisions. Caleb watched him approach. The vote. Amelia's expression became guarded again. The messenger dismounted and handed Caleb a sealed notice. Caleb read it once, then passed it to her. Ironwood had approved the 90-day provisional commission. Amelia read the final line and released a slow breath. Silvercrest voted this morning. We approved it too. Caleb looked toward the river. Then for 90 days, neither kingdom controls it alone. Amelia folded the notice. And after 90 days, the results will tell us whether equality works better than ownership. Caleb turned toward her. Does telling you the truth change anything between us? One thing. Hope rose before he could stop it. Amelia met his eyes. Now I know you are finally willing to remember the man you were without asking me to forgive him. Caleb let the hope settle into something quieter. I will not ask. Good. She started toward the waiting horses, then paused. The commission begins tomorrow. Do not mistake today's vote for redemption, Caleb. I will not. Amelia looked back at him. Because sharing power for one day is easy. The next 90 will show me whether your honesty lasts when equality starts costing you something. Equal authority begins today, Amelia said as the first meeting of the joint Moonriver Stewardship Commission opened. 6 Ironwood representatives sat on one side of the table and 6 from Silvercrest on the other, but for the first time no royal seal stood above the other. Caleb looked at the reports spread between them. During the first week, the commission would monitor reservoir levels every 6 hours, protect household wells and livestock stations, and maintain reduced irrigation schedules across Ironwood's eastern districts while Silvercrest's southern basin recovered. Elder Harrison studied the figures. Ironwood's eastern reservoir is down another 4%. Robert Hale answered, Silvercrest's southern flow has risen 12%. Harrison frowned. So equality begins with Ironwood losing water. Amelia remained silent. Caleb understood the test immediately. No, he said. It begins with both kingdoms seeing the same numbers. Harrison turned toward him. Our farmers will not care about percentages in Silvercrest when their irrigation hours are reduced. Then we explain why the restrictions exist. And if they blame Queen Hayes? Caleb looked across the table at Amelia. Then I tell them the decision is mine too. The commission approved the week's schedule 7 votes to 5, with representatives from both kingdoms supporting it. That mattered more than Caleb expected. Amelia had insisted that no decision should survive on national loyalty alone. By the 3rd week, the first real test came. Ironwood's northern reservoir dropped faster than projected after an unusually dry stretch. Under the old treaty, Caleb could have ordered the diversion gate opened immediately. Under the provisional accord, he had to bring the request before the commission. Harrison placed the emergency report on the table. We need another 10% for 5 days. A Silvercrest engineer shook her head. That could slow recovery in 3 downstream wells. Ironwood has priority under the old treaty. Harrison stopped himself. The room went quiet. Caleb could feel every eye turned toward him. He could invoke emergency authority. The accord allowed it for 48 hours. Nobody could accuse him of violating the agreement. Amelia said nothing. Again, she refused to make his choice for him. Caleb studied the projections. What is the smallest increase that protects the reservoir? For percent, Marcus said, if Ironwood extends irrigation restrictions for another week. Harrison stared at him. That will anger the eastern districts. Probably. Caleb turned to the commission. I request 4% for 48 hours, followed by a joint review. Amelia raised one hand. Silvercrest agrees if our engineers monitor the downstream wells during the increase. Agreed. The measure passed 10-2. Nothing dramatic happened afterward. No kingdom collapsed. No farmer lost an entire season. The river simply kept moving while 12 people adjusted decisions together. By day 45, Ironwood's reservoir decline had stabilized. By day 60, 2 Silvercrest wells previously considered at risk were recovering. By day 75, the commission had approved 9 major decisions, and not one had required either ruler to overrule the other. Caleb began to understand that giving up unilateral control had not made him powerless. It had made every decision harder to abuse. On the 89th day, the commission gathered in Silvercrest to prepare its final recommendation. Harrison, who had opposed the experiment from the beginning, placed the newest reservoir report before Caleb. Ironwood lost less water than our original projections predicted. Caleb looked at him. You sound disappointed. Harrison almost smiled. I prefer being wrong to being thirsty. Across the table, Amelia heard him and allowed herself a quiet laugh. The sound drew Caleb's attention before he could stop it. During the past 3 months, something between them had changed, but neither had named it. They had argued over reservoir thresholds, conservation schedules, farming priorities, and emergency procedures. Amelia had challenged him when he became impatient. Caleb had disagreed without trying to command her. Trust had returned not as one grand moment, but in dozens of small decisions where neither person demanded the other surrender. Robert collected the final reports. Tomorrow, both councils review the commission's recommendation. If approved, shared stewardship becomes permanent. Caleb looked toward Amelia. Nervous. No. You are a terrible liar. And you are still irritating. Some traditions deserve preservation. Her smile appeared briefly, then faded into something more thoughtful. 3 months ago, I believed equality would cost you more than you were willing to give. Caleb looked toward the Moonriver beyond the council windows. It did cost me something. Amelia waited. The certainty that my answer had to be the final one. Do you miss it? Less every day. She studied him for a long moment. Good. Caleb expected her to leave with the others, but Amelia paused at the doorway. Tomorrow, come to the final review as King Warren. Of course. Her gaze held his. Afterward, if the accord passes, perhaps Caleb can stay for a while. Before he could answer, she walked away. Caleb remained beside the table, staring at the empty doorway. 90 days earlier, he had wanted forgiveness. Now he understood that what Amelia was offering was smaller, slower, and far more valuable. The possibility of trust freely given. 90 days after Caleb first agreed to share control of the Moonriver, he stood in Silvercrest's council chamber and watched 12 representatives cast the vote that would decide whether the experiment became law. No one spoke while Robert Hale counted the ballots. Amelia sat across from Caleb, her expression composed, though he noticed her thumb resting against the edge of the final report. 3 months earlier, he would not have recognized that tiny movement as tension. Now he did. Robert looked up. 12 votes in favor. None opposed. For one heartbeat, the room remained silent. Then Marcus released a breath beside Caleb. Even Harrison gave a reluctant nod. Robert placed the permanent accord between the two rulers. The Joint Moonriver Stewardship Commission recommends that equal management become permanent, subject to review every 5 years. Amelia signed first. Caleb followed. Their names appeared on equal lines. No kingdom above the other. No ruler holding the right to decide alone. Amelia closed the document. Then the river remained shared. Caleb looked toward the windows. where sunlight reflected from the water beyond Silvercrest's eastern wall. As it should. By afternoon, the delegations had departed. Ironwood's carriage waited in the palace courtyard while Marcus went ahead to check the route home. Caleb descended the stone steps alone. He had almost reached the carriage when Amelia called behind him. Caleb, he stopped. During 90 days of meetings, disagreements, letters, and negotiations, she had called him King Warren whenever official business ended. He turned slowly. Amelia stood beneath the palace arch without her crown. Did I forget something? He asked. Possibly. She walked toward him. Do you still think I returned to defeat you? Caleb considered the question. You did. Her eyebrows rose. I never fought you. You did not have to. He glanced toward the palace, then toward the river. You became everything I once said you could never be. Amelia's expression softened. And you did it without taking anything from me. I lost only what I should never have protected in the first place. Control. Pride. He paused. The belief that admitting I was wrong would make me smaller. A quiet smile touched her mouth. That sounds almost wise. Do not tell Marcus. I have a reputation to protect. A laugh escaped her, soft and unguarded. Caleb had not heard that sound directed at him in 7 years. Memory pulled at him, but he did not reach for it. Goodbye, Amelia. He turned toward the carriage. That is all. He looked back. What else should there be? 3 months ago, you wanted to know whether anything between us could change. I did. And now? Caleb took a slow breath. Now I understand that wanting something does not give me the right to expect it. Amelia studied him. That is a careful answer. Then I will give you the honest one. He stepped closer, but left several feet between them. I do not want my Omega back. Something closed in Amelia's expression. Caleb continued immediately. Because you were never mine to own. The woman I remember no longer exists exactly as I remember her, and neither does the man who sent her away. Amelia said nothing. I would like to know the Queen, he said. Not because of an old bond. Not because changing gives me a claim on forgiveness. I would like to know you if you ever choose to let me. The courtyard seemed to quiet around them. And if I say no, she asked. I go home. I honor the accord. And I remain grateful that knowing you forced me to become a better king. Force, strongly encouraged. The corner of her mouth lifted. She let him wait another moment. Have dinner with me. Caleb blinked. As King Warren? No crowns. No councils. No river reports. Then as Caleb? That depends on whether Caleb can finish one meal without negotiating something. He smiled. I may require practice. Amelia turned toward the palace. Caleb followed, then stopped. Amelia. She looked back. Is this forgiveness? Her expression became serious. No. He nodded. Fair. Then warmth returned to her eyes. It is dinner. Caleb walked beside her. Neither led. Neither followed. Beyond the palace walls, the Moonriver moved freely between two kingdoms that had learned equality did not make either one smaller. 7 years earlier, Caleb had decided where Amelia belonged. Tonight, she decided for herself whether he could walk beside her. And for the first time, that choice belonged entirely to her.